Hey, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching In Depth
On Now You Know. So I've been reading the news. Apparently, sky is falling.
Really?
It's completely, apparently Tesla is going out of business.
Oh, yeah, I read that. I was going to go down to Fremont and buy a robot real cheap.
I assume that they're just selling them. They're just giving them away
Pennies
now.
on the dollar. Yeah, can we talk about this?
Yeah, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of hubbub this week about the Tesla stock price, about whether Model 3 production woes are going to just cause them to
Go out of business, of course.
And about the Model X crash in Mountain View, California.
Yep.
And you couple these all together and you get a big mix of, the sky is falling and Tesla's falling apart.
Right.
I guess we should go to the source, right? We should go to the man in charge.
Yes.
He has tweeted about this, and they're pretty serious tweets, I think. So let's just read what Elon said about this. Tesla goes bankrupt. Despite intense efforts to raise money, including a last-ditch mass sale of Easter eggs, we are sad to report that Tesla has gone completely and totally bankrupt. So bankrupt, you can't believe it. There are many chapters of bankruptcy, and as critics so rightly pointed out, Tesla has them all, including chapter 14 and a half, the worst one. Elon was found passed out against a Tesla Model 3, surrounded by Teslaquila bottles, the tracks of dried tears still visible on his cheeks. This is not a forward-looking statement because, obviously, what's the point? Happy new month.
Obviously, Elon wanted to take the opportunity of April Fools to point out how kind of ridiculous this was.
Let's kind of break it back apart. And what happens is, and we've seen this many times before. In fact, let's pull up a chart of Tesla's stock prices over the years. And as you can see, the stock goes into these dips from time to time.
There's little dents in it.
Each of these dips was exactly what we're going through now. The sky is falling. The company's going to go bankrupt for one reason or the other.
Right.
Usually they pull out the big guns of the Bob Lutzes of the world to explain to us how Elon doesn't know what he's doing and they're too far in debt and electric cars aren't going to work, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
This happened with all of the cars, the Roadster, the Model S, the Model X, and now it's happening with the Model 3.
Right.
At each of those dips, it goes down. And what happens is the first day that it starts to go down, let's say 2 or 3%, that's your first thing that you use in your story, right? Oh, the stock went down 3% on Monday.
Right.
So I guess we're in a free fall.
Right. And then the more gullible people in the world go, oh my gosh, Tesla's losing value. I better get out quick.
Right.
Because it's going out of business.
What helped them this week was they had a couple things going for them. Yes, the stock took a little dip on the first day of like 3%, and then they had a Model X crash.
Right.
How convenient, because now you get to say, oh, this just shows that you can't trust the cars and the company doesn't know what they're doing.
Right.
So let's examine the Model X crash, because I think this played into a large part of why we had the skies falling story.
Right.
This was a very unfortunate crash. Okay. So none of the things we're going to talk about do I want to be taken lightly. Someone died in this crash, and that is a horrible tragedy. But let's look at what we think happened in that crash. This was on the 101 in Mountain View, California, in the morning, going eastbound.
Yep.
We have located that place on Google Maps of where it took place. And so Brent and Bobby pull up a Google Map view of what the driver might have seen.
Right. And so now what we're playing is basically a compiled set of images from Google Maps of driving onto this off-ramp.
Right. Now, the off-ramp in this case is on the left. It's a one-lane off-ramp. And as you approach this off-ramp, you'll see that the road splits and you get a very thin, narrow splitting of the road that grows into basically the size of a lane. And here's where I think one of the major problems happened. We know from Tesla's statement that the driver did not have his hands on the wheel for 6 seconds prior to the impact.
Just to preface, autopilot was engaged in this accident. A lot of people are going to point to this and say, aha, Tesla can't be trusted. Their autonomy is terrible. This is the end of autonomous vehicles. Well, first of all, Tesla in autopilot is not a fully autonomous vehicle.
No, it's a driver assist function.
Right.
You're supposed to be having your hands on the wheel, paying attention at all times.
Right. In Tesla's statement, they say that the driver should have had about 5 seconds to react. He should have been looking at the thing that he was about to crash into for about 5 seconds. And we can sort of we can get an idea of what this view is going to be from Google Maps.
Now, we also know from Tesla that the driver was in the number 1 setting on follow. which means that you're at the closest that the car will get to the car in front of you.
Right.
What Jesse and I think are conjecturing, what I'm conjecturing, is that there was a car in front of the victim's car, and the Tesla Model X was following that car closely. Right. And then I think that car either went left or right at the split, and the whole time the Tesla Model X is thinking that it's in a lane.
Right. So as the car tries to, let's say, someone tried to cut over that split, because that split is quite long.
Right.
And if you're like, oh no, that's my exit, maybe you do that, or maybe you're a jerk and you're like, I'm going to cut all these people off. It's quite possible that happened and basically led the car onto what it thought was
a lane.
And so the car sort of followed it and said, okay, I see that there's 2 lane lines here. I'm going to trust the car ahead of me, and I'm going to just assume, okay, the left one is my new lane. So it followed that. The car finally merged into whatever lane it was going to do, or maybe it gave up and went back to the other lane, whatever. This is, of course, conjecture, but if it was led onto these 2 lines in the road that are close to parallel, the car is going to think, excellent, I am in an empty lane. Let me speed up to whatever the driver set as the max speed.
Right.
Which could have been 80 miles an hour.
Meanwhile, our conjecture is that the driver was probably not paying attention, as is probably evidenced by Tesla's reporting that there was no hand on the wheel for 6 seconds prior to the crash.
Right. So another thing that caused this crash to be as deadly and as devastating as it was, which is that the crash attenuator had already been crashed into. Now, the crash attenuator is, you sort of see these on lane splits all the time. It's this, it looks like a guardrail, but with a bunch of splits in it, and basically it compresses.
It's supposed to be an accordion, right? That takes the impact.
And that's supposed to slow you down from, going 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, bring you to a dead stop with, however long the crash attenuator is over a span of time. And that's supposed to deaccelerate you much better than if you were to just boom, slam into a concrete wall, you're dead.
Now, what happened to that attenuator?
The attenuator had already been smashed, as you can see from pictures from Tesla's statement. The day before this accident, the attenuator was already crumpled, which means that it was not
doing its
job. It hadn't been repaired. You could see 2 cones. So obviously DOT had been out there and put down 2 cones to save someone's life from something that is already marked.
I want to stop you here, Jesse, because instead of the media coming out with the story about how we should be taking care of our roads in this country, the story is about, let's blame Tesla for this accident.
Right.
I believe there's 2 parties probably at fault here. I don't have all the information yet.
Right.
I believe that the driver is probably to blame because they probably were not paying attention to the road as they should have been.
Right.
And I believe that the attenuator should have been there.
Right. If the attenuator was there was a high likelihood that the accident would not have been deadly or as devastating as it was. If you look at the aftermath pictures, the front of the Model X is completely missing.
Right.
It's been ripped off the car. Basically, it slammed into that, sheared off the front half of the car, and then it continued to skid down the highway for like 100 feet or so. And it's not like this has never happened before because the attenuator had already been crumpled.
Right.
Someone had already made this mistake.
So here's my question. When that first accident happened and the attenuator was destroyed, why didn't they put barrels of sand or water in its place temporarily until they could repair it?
Exactly. There was absolutely no safety net for drivers, and something that has to be there, basically, because they've designed it that there needs to be something for that lane split.
Then you brought up a very good point.
We were looking at the Google Maps imagery, the on the road imagery, and the concrete divide between the lane of the highway and the off ramp is not rumble strips. It's not the grooved pavement that makes your car go on the highway, which it should be, I would imagine, because you don't want cars to be there.
Right.
So you want to alert drivers that are on that they're in trouble.
That would be a cheap, easy fix.
It would not only save regular drivers' lives who were driving on this road and maybe didn't see the crash attenuator, which they crashed into sometime before this accident, but it would also give the not paying attention Tesla driver some chance to react. I mean, he did apparently have about 5 seconds of reaction time. I think he could have slammed on the brakes or maneuvered out of the way, which Tesla has stated didn't happen. There was no takeover at any point. So another thing that the media did was that they picked up on that the batteries caught fire.
Yep.
And they said that it's a deadly, fiery crash. Now, there is some footage, and we're going to show it now, of the fire that was happening. So first of all, there was the crash. Then the driver was removed from the vehicle. And then the battery compartment started to catch fire.
Right.
And Tesla has said that they've specially designed the battery compartment to not all explode all at once and erupt into flame. And that's what we can see here. We can see little spurts of flame happening as each cell catches on fire. The driver had already been removed at that point. So, I mean, the media is just picking up on every little tidbit of information that happens. It was not ravaged. It was not completely inflamed. The driver didn't die because he was caught on fire. He died because he got into a massive collision with a concrete wall.
Yeah, and Tesla's billions of miles of actual driving data have shown that gas cars in the United States are 5 times more likely to experience a fire than a Tesla vehicle.
Right.
This I didn't see in any of the media coverage that I read about. They just said, fire, Tesla, bad, their fault.
Right.
It had nothing to do with the death of the driver.
So that basically wraps up our little mini rant about the Tesla Model X crash. And then let's move on to some of the other things, the other reasons why Tesla is apparently going to go bankrupt.
They're going to go bankrupt because they can't make Model 3s fast enough, Jesse.
Okay, so we're looking at the Bloomberg tracker. They give their estimate, and that's according to this black line.
Right.
Then you can see
what are those little yellow dots?
So there's yellow and green dots. The green dots are Model 3s spotted in the wild. So those are apparently very reputable. Then there are the yellow dots, which are reported Model 3 serial numbers.
Right. So I can go onto the Model 3 tracker on Bloomberg, and I can say, oh, here's my VIN number that I just got delivered yesterday.
Now, if you notice, the line is way below where the dots are, and it's continued to be below. Now, that would make sense if we were, say, testing a medical procedure or some kind of statistical analysis of something. However, we kind of have to trust the data that we're getting. Because if we're not trusting each individual person, then I don't really understand what this data is. If it's garbage in, garbage out, then I guess forget it.
And in fact, I would argue that the black line should be above the yellow dots, and here's why. When you report that you got your Tesla, that's not counting all the Teslas that are on trucks being sent all around the country as we speak, and those should actually be counted then, not just the moment you get them.
Regardless of what the actual number is, regardless of whether the Bloomberg tracker is being too conservative, what is the rush? Basically, the Model 3 is being produced. People are getting their cars delivered.
Yep.
We are hearing through our Facebook messages and through comments that people are getting their Model 3s and that they love them.
You can go onto our website, onto the Supercharger review page, and you can actually see Superchargers with Model 3 sitting there with people reviewing the Superchargers and happy with their Model 3s.
Right. So, I mean, the Model 3 is an awesome car. We have one. We were driving one. We've met other people who have driven them. We've shown it to people. We've had them sit in the car. We've had them drive it. They are like, oh, well, this is fantastic.
And it gets updates every week that are making it more fantastic.
So that's all good stuff that's happening.
But you just asked, what's the rush?
What is the rush? Because
I'll tell you what the rush is.
Yeah.
We've shifted in this country for some reason to this quarterly report method, which is if you don't do things, really well by the quarter and you don't make enough money at the end of the quarter, then there's something wrong and your company's going to crap.
Right.
And who invented that idea? It makes every CEO try and make their quarterly numbers look good at the expense of their long-term numbers.
Elon came out with some goals that they'd like to hit. 2,500 cars by the end of the quarter. And it's like, oh, are they going to hit that number? Oh, no, are they not going to hit that number? As if they haven't made a single Model 3.
Right.
They're making them. Maybe they're a little bit slow, and people are like, oh, people are going to have to wait. Then people will wait.
Right.
Just like they've waited for the Model S, the Model X.
Yes.
I mean,
do you realize that all those cars that came before, the Roadster, the S, the X, were all slower?
The Model X it was a year late.
Yes.
The first Model X that came out was a year late from when they wanted it to come out.
Do you know what all the word was on the street when that happened? Oh, they're going bankrupt.
Right. They didn't go bankrupt at that point when they were a smaller company making less money, when they were making it, an expensive SUV that only the rich people could buy. I mean, it was like completely more plausible that it would go out of business then. You're telling me now that they are making Model 3s, that they are putting Model 3s in people's garages and driveways, and that they're going to go out of business because why?
Well, and let's think about this. Last year in 2017, they had $12 billion in revenue. This is pretty much without counting Model 3 sales. I mean, there were a few Model 3 sold that year, but it was very, very small. That was $12 billion of revenue selling batteries, solar, and the Model X and S.
Right.
Now this year, 2018, is going to be the first real year with Model 3 sales.
Right.
And even though you might be questioning whether they're going to sell 1,800 cars a week or if they're going to be selling 2,500 cars a week, they're going to be selling thousands of cars a week.
Right. There's a backlog. I mean, as soon as they make a car, it's basically ready to be sold.
Right. So they're going to be making a ton of money on the Model 3 this year. Do we know exactly how much? Not yet.
And do we know exactly when? No, but they're making them.
But here's what the other reality could look like. They could be making cars that no one wants.
Right.
There are plenty of car companies that do that already.
Right.
Or they could be not able to make hardly any cars at all, like the Chevy Bolt.
The Model 3, let's just talk about, is already the most popular EV this year.
That's right. In the first 2 months of the year, it's outsold every other EV.
It's already ahead of all the competition. So what is the rush? What other car is it competing with? I mean, it's outselling the Bolt already. I mean, the Bolt had a year's head start of building hype. They could have put more effort into building factories and whatever they wanted to do. The Model 3 is already crushing it. On top of that, the Model S and the Model X are crushing it.
Here is fund manager John Thompson, and he has been shorting the Tesla stock for a while now. And a lot of his quotes are what the media has picked up on as why Tesla is going to go bankrupt. Here's one of his quotes. Companies eventually have to make a profit, and I don't ever see that happening here. He manages $25 million of money that's shorting Tesla stock. And he's been shorting it for a long time. So he's probably been waking up almost every day for the past year and going, why am I shorting Tesla stock?
Right, he's going, crap. He's looking at the stock price. Crap.
Another quote here. Tesla, without any doubt, is on the verge of bankruptcy. This is something he sent out to his clients via email. He explained that funding will be hard to come by in the face of problems in delivering the Model 3. Also, the declining demand for the Model S and X and the extreme valuation and the likely downgrade of Tesla's credit rating. As a reality check, Tesla is worth twice as much as Ford, yet Ford made 6 million cars last year at $7.6 billion profit, while Tesla made 100,000 cars at a $2 billion loss. Furthermore, Ford has $12 billion in cash held for a rainy day, while Tesla will likely run out of money in the next 3 months. I've never seen anything so absurd in my career.
So this guy is comparing the Ford Motor Company, which was started in 1903, to a company, Tesla, which was started in 2003.
Okay.
So Ford basically had a 100-year, a 1-century head start on Tesla. And this guy is comparing the two as if they are both companies that are exactly the same. And then saying, this one's, look at this thing. It's like if you compared a 115-year-old man to a 15-year-old kid. And we're like, it's like two completely different things. Like you don't really compare the two and be like, oh, well, he's going to be faster and smarter, and these are similar things to compare to.
Ford is not an innovative company, so to say that it's got money for a rainy day, yes, it's had 115 years to build up that money for a rainy day. Right. Tesla is a startup. If any startup had $12 billion in cash, you would severely question the innovation of that company.
Right. Tesla is pouring all of their money into creating something that has not happened before.
One of the big problems people have with Apple right now is that they're sitting on a big pile of cash. Why? Because they don't know what to do with it. They have no more innovative ideas left. They just keep coming up with more iPhones.
Right.
That's why people are worried about Apple. They're supposed to be an innovative company, and yet, what are they innovating?
Right.
Tesla is doing exactly what it should be doing. It's taking all of its available money and putting it into innovation.
Right. We've talked extensively about Amazon. I don't want to bore you guys. We've talked about Amazon. Amazon has not made a profit since its founding. It is constantly taking all of its money, pouring it directly into innovation, into creating a better and better company. And that's why it is such a huge monster of a company that it is today.
Right.
They simply are just like, what's that? We'll do that. What's that? We'll do that. What's that? We'll do that. Here, let me take out my wallet.
Right.
Let me just give you some more money. To do that. What? Oh, I just got paid. Here's all of the money. There you go. That's how they became the company that they are today. They didn't do it by going, let me see here. Oh, no, I don't think I'm gonna hold on to all of this. Tesla is just, yes, they are burning money. They're pouring money at all of their innovation, but look at them.
Look at what they've accomplished.
Look at what they've accomplished.
And we haven't even mentioned the fact that they were spending money during this time, this burning of money period, on building a semi-truck, on building a Roadster, on building the Model Y, which will be coming out soon. Like, these are all things that people are dying for. But I think the biggest thing is a self-fulfilling prophecy that they mentioned that the stock's going down, and then look at that. It dipped to a year low.
Right.
Which, okay, for many people, I got many emails this week of, I can't even look at my stock portfolio. Stop it, people.
First of all, look at your stock portfolio. It's important to stay on top of your finances. Yep. I mean, just because something bad is happening does not mean that you should be wincing away from, I don't even want to think about it.
Also, were you in it for the long haul or not? I mean, if you go to a baseball analogy, don't most baseball teams go through a slump somewhere in mid-year? Do you stop becoming fans because of that?
Right.
No. That's how things work in the stock market. There are those weeks where things go down. Those are opportunities, people. Those are opportunities that if you've got a little cash on the sidelines, pick up some more shares. You know what's exciting to me, though, Jesse, is that with the Model 3 coming out, more and more people in the media are going to actually be driving Teslas. Because let's face it, Model S's and X's are expensive cars, and I'll bet you most journalists in the world can't afford them. But hopefully, as more and more Model 3s come out, and more journalists get their hands on them, and their friends drive them, and they drive them, they're going to start to realize what we've realized, which is the company is a real company selling real cars, doing real things. And they're going to stop reporting on these silly stories that never stick. Go back through your browser history. Read some of those stories from a year ago.
Right.
Did they stick? Were they real? No.
Right.
These aren't either. Please come back to this video a year from now.
Right.
And you'll see that we were right. I'm absolutely sure of it. That Tesla is not going to go bankrupt because of what just happened this week.
And if it does go bankrupt, please feel free to come back to this video and just tear us to pieces. Go right ahead. Thank you so much for watching this episode of In Depth.
I can't wait to see what's going to happen to the views in a year from now.
Yeah.
As you put it on your Google Calendar.
Thank you so much for watching.
Now you know.